Hi, it's me again with Corel Roll Tips and Tricks, and somebody sent me this photograph of this paint can rack. Pretty good idea. And how to make this in Corel and what angle you would think and blah, blah, blah. So I went out to the shop and I measured a paint can, and the one thing good about it, they're almost all the exact same size. So this one was 2 5/8 by 7 7/8. It looks like it's at a 45-degree angle. So I'm going to rotate my rattle can to 45 degrees. I've made a shelf that is 8 inches long by a 1/4 inch thick, and I'm going to rotate it 45 degrees. And then I'm going to bring it into my picture. Well, I need the first one about right here. And then I'm going to control D and make a duplicate of that shelf. And I'm going to start moving. I'm going to hold down the control button. And I'm going to bring it in about right there. Now I need to measure how far I moved it. So I'm going to take the parallel dimension tool and measure from that node to that node, and it's 5.44. And you could, change this and make your cans a little further down. And matter of fact, we're going to do that. Let's move our can down a little bit where it's more in the drawing or more into the shelf, so you've got less can out here. Now let's take the whole thing, Control G, and group it together. Move it by start holding down the control button and get it about on that. I didn't make a duplicate of it. Control D. Move it till it gets about right there. Now we need to figure out how far we moved it. And so take your parallel dimension tool and get from that node to that node is 7.16 inches. So change your nudge distance to 7.16. Grab the shelf in the can and Control D and make a duplicate and move it down. And this has 4 shelves, so we're going to make 4 shelves. We can get rid of this. And you see they all fit. No, we're going to need one more shelf. So let's ungroup this. Control U. And let's move this down that same increment. I didn't make a duplicate, Control D. So now we have the shelves and the holders. So the top shelf is going to hold the can up top, and the bottom shelf is going to keep it from falling. Now we need to find out how big this sideboard needs to be. And one way you could do it is group all this together, Control G. And I'm going to put it in the center of the page just for grins. And with this selected, I'm going to hold down the Shift key and get the rectangle tool. I put a rectangle around the whole thing. Now, we don't need a rectangle. Well, you actually do, but the shelves aren't going to go all the way. So I would maybe center the shelf more by nudging it over. Let's go 1/4 inch at a time. And you know what we can do? We can go, we can select it all and go EC. And then that put the shelf back where it was. So let's just nudge it over. Whoop. Let's get our rectangle and just nudge it over. So we want the can kind of sticking out. And we're actually going to make it, I know his laser is 35.5 inches across. He did tell me that. And there's a couple ways you could save space and room, is you could make this top shelf shorter, because it doesn't need anything to hold up, and you could actually make this top shelf shorter. And let's don't do that right now. So that's going to be our side shelf. Let's round the corners off with our ratio lock. So you know what? Let's see if it's rounded on the bottom. It is. You'd want to do that just so you would never catch a corner or whatever. And you could type in the number. And we could change that because that's, well, okay, that's good. We're going to leave that just like it is. So now what I would do, so there's the model of the shelf. I'm going to Control D and make a duplicate of that guy, and I'm going to move it over for future reference. So this shelf, now you need to find out how many cans you could put crossways. In this drawing, there are 6 cans. So we're going to take, this is the shape of a can. I made a little bit bigger. And we're going to, let's say we space them out 3/4 of an inch apart. So Control D and make a duplicate. So we need, well, let's do step and repeat. Edit, step and repeat. Horizontally distance between objects and no offset. And we want 5 copies because we already have one. Somehow it went uphill. This should do, oh, I had an offset. That might be too close together, oh, because I didn't put 3/4 of an inch. We want 0.75 apart. That looks good. So now our shell's going to be 17 1/4 at least wide. So what you could do now is group these together, Control G. And we need to take our shelf, which was, okay, I did make a duplicate, and this is why, because I'm going to take this guy apart. Well, I know it's 8 inches. The board was 8 inches across. So we need 8 inches. And this is where I want to really draw in the center of the page. So let's move this out of the way. And you'll see why in just a second. Because our can holes are centered in groups. So I'm going to hit P and then hit P with our shelf and make our shelf 8 inches wide by, this thing is 20, and so let's make it 20, our rectangle like 23 inches. And that's going to be our shelf. Now, in the picture, it looks like it's been doubled up MDF. I do this a lot, and I do it with indexing marks, indexing dowels, and I might even make a second video on that. He made his holes quite a bit larger to fit the can better. So what we need to do now is Control G to group this together. And so this, you know what? I must have had my nudge distance, or this ratio is locked. I need to ungroup this. And I need to make my rectangle 8 inches. So it's 8 inches by 23. But we need the holes not on that edge. So we need the holes, take the parallel dimension tool and go from about right there to right there, 0.39 of an inch. So what I would do is set my nudge distance on, let's make it 0.4. Doesn't have to be exactly like the drawing. Let's ungroup everything. Okay, let's grab our circles, holding down the control button and get them to where they're on that edge. And it should have snap to object on. And it is, but it didn't seem like it snapped. Let's zoom in here. We could get them a little bit closer. If you grab the 4-point arrow right there, it snapped to it. Now we can nudge them up that 0.39. That's our shelf. So now let's group this together, Control G. Now it all depends on whether you're going to double it up. Now doubling up is going to take more MDF. It is going to be a little bit stronger. And And so we're just going to say we're going to double up, and MDF is pretty close to 1/4 of an inch. So we need some tabs on the center of this guy that are, let's make them 6 inches by 0.5 inches. Okay. Let's take, and this is why I like working in the center of the page. I'm going to hit P and put that guy in the center of the page. So now it's in the center of the wood. I'm going to start moving, and I'm going to hold down the control button. And a little bit long could be okay. You don't want to be too short. I'm going to set my nudge distance on something really low, 0.001. It should snap to that, but we're going to go right on the line. Now we know that this box is 23 inches, so now we can change our nudge factor to 23 plus 1/2 an inch, 23.5. Control D and move it over the other side. Now it's exactly where it is. Let's try our virtual segment delete key. Well, so we're not in it far enough. We need, and one thing you could do now that we know the shape, let's convert it to a curve, grab our shape tool, and then that way we haven't changed our size, and move it holding down the control button. And we can do the same thing over here. That way we haven't changed our, we need to, and if you would have converted them both to a curve at first before you duplicated it, it would have been a little bit easier. And holding down the control button. Then you can take the virtual segment delete key and delete those 2 lines. So that is our tab. And to kind of weld that all up, take your Smart Fill tool and fill that in with black. There is the shelf. Left click, right click. You don't have to weld anything, everything's tacked together. Now the only thing we have left to do is take our, let's break this all apart. And that's why I made a copy, just in case I mess up, break all the objects apart. And we want to just take the cans out of the way. We don't want the shelves to move. And I'm getting the outline. So for a second, I'm going to set my nudge factor on 10 inches, and I'm going to nudge the cabinet out of the way. And I'm going to go up here and group and ungroup all, and I'm going to remove our cans. Okay. Now we knew that this hole, and it all depends on whether, and let's say we're going to double this up, because we doubled it up on the side. So now we need another slot that is 1/2 an inch thick by 6 inches. And that gives us that slot. We're going to make it red. Now what I'm going to do is bring this over. Let's zoom in here. We're going to turn this at a 45-degree angle. And we're going to grab that, hold down the shift key and grab that and hit, well, we don't want to do that the wrong way. You want to grab that first, then hold down the shift key and go C-E. That put it in the exact spot where it needs to be. Now, if I would have remembered our spacing, I can't remember what it was. If I would have written it down, let me just zoom in here and see if it'll come up again correctly. From that node to that node, it was 7.16. That sounds right. Set your nudge factor on 7.16. Take this and make a duplicate, Control D, and nudge it down. So it's not right. So what you can do is just Control D and make a duplicate of that guy, move it down, have that one selected and select this one, and go EC. Move that one down. Oh, look, now the nudge factor is working. Good. So now what we can do is take the virtual segment delete key, and probably the easiest thing to do would just be to nudge them out of the way. Let's set our nudge factor on something pretty big. Just nudge these guys out of the way. And the only thing bad about it, I don't know whether I don't remember what our nudge factor was when we nudged that out of the way. I think it was, let's put it back. I think it was 10 inches. Nudge this back. That looks right. Now we can delete all this. And that's basically it. Because this piece is going to fit in there at an angle, at an angle, at an angle. It's going to look just like that. That's kind of what he did. He put tabs. And that's all there to it. Now this piece seems like it has a backer board top and bottom. And there he didn't even put it, but on the top, I don't think you need it. You could very easily add that. I don't think the can's gonna not be able to fall out anyway. Now, if you wanted to, you know what, I'm gonna make a second video so it won't be too long. If you wanted to have a recess for the cans, and I'm also gonna show you how to index it. So you just need 4 shelves. So just Control D and make duplicate. Cut that out 4 times, unless you're gonna double it up. You could decide not to double it up, then you need to change your tabs. And then you just need 2 of these. I hope that helped a little bit. Thank you for watching.